All right, here in Adobe Illustrator 2023, we're going to look through a pen tool worksheet. I'm going to teach you how to use the pen tool in many different ways, but touch upon a few basics in Illustrator, but also, once again, focusing on the pen tool and the way we can play with it. So this worksheet, I'm just going to start at the top here. I'm going to look at these basic tools, but what we need open at the beginning, and maybe I'll go through some other panels that we might open as well. The number one panel I like always having open is my layer panel. Here it's already set up for you. You're not going to touch anything with the base. You're going to do everything on your working layer that I've already set up for you. Your base layer is everything that's already there. It's all locked. You don't need to touch it. You're going to be making or placing your pen tool on top of all these little templated pieces here. Then you're also going to have your stroke panel open because we're going to need to play around with that a little bit. So we have our stroke panel. If you need any of these panels open in Illustrator, you can go up to Window, and any of the panels that you need open are right here. So if you need your stroke panel open, or if you need your layers panel open, or anything like that, or eventually we're going to go to a swatches panel, which I always have open, a color panel if you need that. Same idea with the color panel, the swatch panel. And I always like the control panel open, which by default is not open. The control panel is the panel up top here that just gives you access to all more access to some of the tools that are chosen. So if you choose the pen tool, it gives you more options with the pen tool. If you open the move tool, it gives you more options with the move tool. So it's just quick access to some extra things we need. So that's kind of it. By the way, as I get started here, I'm just going to look at the main tools we're going to look at today. And these tools can be found here. And once again, under Window, there's two different versions of the toolbar. There's an advanced version and a basic version. Now, I always like having the advanced version open to give me some extra tools here that I might use for other projects. But for this, you really only need basic because we're just going to focus on the direct select tool, the move tool or select move tool, and just a few of the pen tools here. That's all we're going to be looking at, really. Obviously, there's a lot more advanced things you can do in Illustrator. This is basic stuff. So right away, select move tool. This is the basic tool you see in a lot of programs, and it's this black arrow tool here. And what this does, and I'm going to talk about this later on too, it's going to help you just move whole shapes or whole paths together as one big uniform piece. The direct select tool is going to allow you, so this is this white arrow tool, the direct select tool. It's going to allow you to move individual parts of a path, and I'll show you that later too. The pen tool, so this is what we're focusing on today. The pen tool is right here. So if I click on the pen tool, I have access to the pen tool and I can see that. So this is my normal pen tool right there, but there's a lot of different options with the pen tool. So what I have this option here, which is an add anchor point tool and delete anchor point and anchor point. So where can I find those? Because I just see this. Well, the pen tool itself, and many of the tools as well, you see this little triangle on the bottom right corner of them. That little triangle means there's another subset of tools underneath. So in order to access those, I can left click on my mouse and I could access those right there, or I could long right click, just hold it for a while and it'll come up too. So I could see my add anchor point tool, which is right here. So that little plus sign gives me I'm going to add an anchor point, and delete anchor points, my delete anchor point tool and an anchor point tool in general. I'm going to talk about all these a little bit later. But understand the keyboard shortcut to get the pen tool activated anyways, just press P on your keyboard and the pen tool will show up. So if I just, right now I'm on the move tool, if I press P, well, automatically my cursor will turn to the pen tool, which is great. So another thing about the subset, I have this little arrow here. This little arrow is about to show me that I can now release that subset and actually see that subset as its own panel, and I can quickly access all the different tools that are in that panel. And that goes for any other subset of panels. I could actually click on it and I could open up all the different ones, and if I want to close it, I can close it. But once again, I do want it open, so I'm just going to left click on that arrow, and there they show up right there. Perfect. I'm going to keep those open. Perfect. Now there are a few other options with the pen tool, and that's if I do something different with the pen tool. If I'm coming to close a path, this little circle is going to show up. If I'm going to continue from a path that's been done already, this little slash shows up. If I'm going to start a new path, that's usually what I see right now. I don't have any path started, so it's going to have that little asterisk on the bottom there. This is a curvature tool. This is a slightly different tool than the pen tool. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And this manipulate curve tool, which is a part of the pen tool, it shows up only at certain times. But once again, we'll talk about all that as we go. A couple of things I'm going to be doing here with some keyboard shortcuts. Now, some of the keyboard shortcuts you'll use once in a while, some you're going to use all the time. These are some that I use all the time, which is Command minus. Now I'm on a Mac, So it's going to be Command, but if you're on a Windows operating system, it's going to be Control. If I'm going to be holding down Option, so Option is on a Mac. On a Windows, it's going to be PC. Or sorry, it's going to be Alt. So that's all. So you're going to use Alt or Option or Command or Control. So that's really the only difference. You don't have to worry too much about that. So either way, we're going to start off here. What I like to do with my keyboard shortcuts is Command plus, which is zoom in. So if I hold down Command and hold down plus, it zooms in. Command minus is zoom out. So I never really use the magnification tool ever. And I never use the hand tool either, because the hand tool, which I love, is the space bar on your keyboard. If you hold down the space bar, it automatically turns into the hand tool. And with that, what I can do is just move it around anywhere I need to go, which I love. But the best thing about this is once I release the space bar, it goes back to the tool I already had originally, which is great. I'm not clicking on the hand tool, it goes to the hand tool, then I have to click back onto a new tool. I don't have to do that. I just click on the space bar, it quickly toggles to the hand tool. I can do some maneuvering, let go, and I'm back on the pen tool. So I absolutely love that. It makes it for very quick, fast flow in my workflow. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in and let's start this little tutorial here. And the good thing about Illustrator here in general, unlike Photoshop, if I zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, eventually I'm going to see all the pixels and eventually it will stop me at a certain percentage. I could see the percentage in the bottom left corner here. If I zoom in and continue to zoom in and over, I can get up to many thousands. It's always going to be that perfect quality, crisp edges because it's vector graphics, which means there's no pixels involved. It's just clean, crisp graphics all the way through at a very high percentage. But I don't have to go that high. But just to let you know that, not a big deal. Okay, so let's get started. I'm just going to click. I click, I made a point. And what happens when I start to drag or move around? I'm not holding anything down, I'm just moving it around. I can see this red line show up that's about to show me where I'm going to go if I click next. So I clicked once, if I click up here, well, that's my line. And then it's going to want to continue and continue and continue. So what I want to do is I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to delete all those. So let's start and actually trace what we have here. So my very first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to click on these little squares are where I'm going to click. So hopefully that leads you around. You understand how this worksheet goes. So I'm going to click on the square. And I'm just going to drag my cursor over. I'm not clicking. I'm not holding down anything on my keyboard. I'm just moving it around. I'm going to click over here. Beautiful. Done. You've made your first click. Great. But here's my first issue. Well, my first issue is, well, I'm done clicking. I don't need this extra line anymore. Well, how do I stop my pen tool from actually creating that new line or anything like that? Very easy. For me, I just press escape. Once I press escape, not only did I stop the line from continuing on, I also have the pen tool ready to go again, ready with that little asterisk on it, showing me I'm going to create a new path. All right, great. Let's redo that again. I just deleted that. I just pressed delete on my keyboard. So hold shift. Well, what does hold shift do? Well, let's try it out. I'm going to click again. And this time, right now, I can kind of go anywhere I want, obviously. But if I hold shift, watch what shift does. What it allows me to do, it keeps my cursor at a 0 degree angle. See, I can't move. If I go up here, it still keeps it at a 0 degree angle. Or I could bring it up to a 45 degree angle or a 90 degree angle. That's what shift does for me. 0 or a 270, 180. So it allows me to keep it at some nice angles here so I can get some really clean, crisp angles if I need them. And usually horizontal or vertical are very common. If I want that perfectly straight line, I'll hold down shift. Once again, if I let go of shift, that's what I get. So I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to click, and there's my perfectly straight 0 degree line. Now, I press escape usually to kill that line, to get rid of it. The other thing I can do is I hover over these these tools, and I see the keyboard shortcut. For the move tool, it's V, and for the direct select tool, it's A. So if I press V, it will stop that line from continuing, and I'm on my selection tool now. That's great. If I press A, I'm on my direct select tool. So that's another way to stop the cursor, the line from continuing on. But of course I do on my pen tool, so that's why I always usually use escape. So I'm going to keep doing that as I go through this tutorial. Okay, the next one, I'm done with that. Let's look at the next one. Let's connect 2 points together. Very simple. So I'm going to click, and once again, I want that perfect 45 degree angle, which just happens to be. I'm going to click on that one, and I'm just going to continue on and click on this one. There I go. Done. Beautiful. Perfect. Now, what you might have noticed with some of yours, I'm going to press escape here. Mine is set up a certain way. I'm just going to go back one over here for a second. I do want you to set up this in a certain way. So normally by default, I do believe by default, your stroke, this is the stroke area, and this is the fill area. Your stroke might be by default black. Totally fine, totally great. That's actually really good. Your fill, more than likely, is white. I'm just going to go to my color panel or my swatch panel. It doesn't really matter, whichever. I'll stick my color panel, and I'm going to make it white. So now my fill area is white, and my stroke is black. I'm going to get back to this in just a little bit, but I do want to just quickly move around, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later down here, fill and stroke. So, and what I also have, by default, your stroke might be set to 1 point or whatever. I like to have, for this worksheet, I like to have my the weight, so the thickness of my stroke, to be 0.25, or what I like to be 0.125. So I could just change that in the weight right here under stroke. Once again, if you don't have them open, you just go to window and you can open up any panel you want. Okay, so my stroke is set to, let's say right now, 0.125. That's great. Actually, I'm going to set it to 0.25 because I know all these are set to 0.125. I'll have it a little bit thicker. But of course, you can go thicker if you want, but I don't suggest that for this. I just want to see enough of what I have, of the line I'm making. So my stroke is set to black, my fill is set to white, and my stroke width, or the thickness of my stroke, is 0.25. So let's do that again. I'm just going to click here. Oh, I already have that set up anyways. I'm just going to select all that, delete, and let's try that again. So select, hold on shift, select, hold on shift. There I go. Escape, beautiful. Let's continue on. Select and select and select. Well, now what happened was, my path, which was what I'm creating, a path with my points. These are called anchor points or points. What's happening is it went back to my default. So that's okay. So what I'll do is I'll click on it again, black and white, and now it should stay. There we go. So I'm going to continue on. So hold on shift, I click, hold on shift, click, hold on shift, click, hold on shift, click. There's another one set up. Beautiful. Looks great. Okay, and if I want to kill that line, get rid of the line, there I go. That's my shape, that's my path. I'm happy with it. Beautiful. Now I'm going to continue on, but there's another option here, and this is super important, because what this allows me to do is I can duplicate this shape a number of different ways. But if I do it this way, this actually is very useful in InDesign, in Photoshop, in so many different programs. And you can do this, hold down Option or Alt on a PC, on a Windows operating system, and you can duplicate things. And this is a great way to learn how to duplicate things. So I'm just going to take what I've made here, and I'm going to bring it over here. But let's see, how do we normally copy something? Well, quite simply, we could just go to click on it and go to edit and copy and edit and paste, and there it is. It pastes it in the middle of my screen, and that's totally fine. But what if I want to paste it or duplicate it and just kind of grab it so I don't have to go with my, Command C, Command V, same idea. I could just do another way to duplicate it. And believe me when I tell you, this is going to make things so much faster for you. So what I do is I'm going to select it, and I'm going to hold down Option. If I hover over the actual path, I hold down Option, look what happens to my cursor. My cursor will, in fact, turn into a double cursor. As you can see, there's two cursors on top of each other. That's telling me I'm about to duplicate something. So let's duplicate it. I'm going to click now. I'm going to click, holding down Option. I select it, hold on Option, I click it, and I'm dragging. So because I have the double cursor, it's telling me I'm duplicating this. I've actually duplicated it. And as soon as I let go, it will be duplicated. Well, do I want to place it just anywhere? No. I'm going to hold down Shift as well. So right now on my keyboard, I'm holding down Option and Shift at the same time. Shift is keeping it in line. Option is allowing me to duplicate it. So I'm just going to hover over and bring it right over here. Done. I have now duplicated it. But watch what happens too. This happens to people all the time, and this is a common frustration in using the pen tool, and I totally understand it. Once again, I'm going to hold down Option. It's copying, it's duplicating it. I'm going to hold down Shift, and what happens is I'm going to let go of my keyboard first, my Option and Shift, and then I'm going to let go of my click on my mouse, and this is what happens. Nothing. I didn't duplicate it. I actually just moved the object, and I didn't want that to happen. So this is very important for those of you just starting out. I'm going to hold down Option. I'm going to hold down Shift to keep it in place. Before I let go of my keyboard keys, Option and Shift, I need to let go of my mouse click first. So I'm going to let go of my mouse click first. Then I let go of my keyboard. And there we go. Now I've actually duplicated. Some people go a little too fast and they let go of them at the same time, and potentially your mouse click didn't actually get held down the whole time, and that's why it doesn't duplicate sometimes. So just keep an eye on that. Let go of the keyboard shortcuts last, and then let go of your mouse click. Okay, so I've duplicated, it looks good. But something weird happened here. So what happened? I'm kind of missing something. Like some things are blocked out, you know, that piece there, like that's kind of weird. Well, once again, this goes back to the fill and stroke idea. So right now, my fill is active. How do I know my fill is active? Well, it's in front of the stroke. And if I click on the stroke, oh, now my stroke is active, meaning I can only manipulate my stroke, change the color of it or whatever, because it's in front. Once again, the fill is in front now, so therefore it's active. I can change the color of it. If I swap, well, I'm not going to swap, that swaps the color, which I don't want. Or if I click on the stroke, it brings it in front. Now it is active. So the problem here is the fill is actually blocking some of the content in behind. So you know what? I actually don't need the fill. I won't need the fill for a while. So let me click on the fill and get rid of it. I'm going to make it none. So the way to make it none is this red stripe here. It says none. So it's active. The fill is active. And I'm going to click on none. And there it is. I now no longer have a fill. I just have that black stroke. Now, if I accidentally clicked on the stroke and said none, well, now it looks like I have nothing there, but I actually do have my path there. The path is still there. It just doesn't have a stroke or a fill. So keep that in mind. You may be doing work and, hey, what's going on? I can't see anything. Don't worry. Select it with your selection tool and drag your marquee over top of it. And then just go to maybe you want to add a fill, but in this situation, we just want to add a stroke, and that's it. Oh, and it went to the default 1 point. Well, I'm going to bring it back down to 0.25. Done. Perfect. I'm happy. Well, we're not done here just yet. We're now going to use these new tools, the add anchor point and delete anchor point tool. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to my subset up here, and it says, what's it say to do here? Well, let's add an anchor point. Okay. So my path is selected. I'm going to click on the plus sign, anchor point tool, add anchor point tool, and I'm just going to click here. That's all I did. So the path was already laid out. Now I added an anchor point. Great. Now what can I do with that anchor point? I could change it around, do whatever I want. Great. Let's add another anchor point just for fun. Let's see what we can do. Let's add a few of them. All right. I'm just going to move this around. Now the issue here, if I click off, I'm not actually on the path. If I click here, usually a dialog box will show up. I always turn them off. A dialog box will say, well, you're not actually on the path. You need to be on a path, and a path does need to be selected. So make sure you're on the path, and then you could add an anchor point tool. So be careful of that. That's all. So I add an anchor points, and I can change up the path, different directions, different things I want to do there. Great. Well, the opposite of that. How about the opposite is delete anchor points. So let's delete those anchor points. I don't need them anymore. There we go. Perfect. And let's delete this one. And what does it do? It sets it back to a straight line at the top. All right, so it'll give you the kind of the simplest path it can find. When it deletes that, it got rid of that one. So obviously from here to here, it connects, and that's all we really need to worry about that. Great. Add anchor point, delete anchor point, very simple. Well, now we've made these paths, which are great, but none of them actually are completed shapes. Let's actually close a shape, and we're going to find our new tool here with the little circle on it, which is going to be close the shape. So now I'm actually going to make a closed shape. So once again, I'm going to click on my pen tool. I'm going to click top here and click up top here. And because this is a straight line all the way across, I'm just going to click holding down shift because I know it's a perfect 0-degree angle. And I'm going to click here and continue to click and just try to follow it as best I can. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just playing around here. All right, click and click. And I can hold down shift to make that perfect. And as I approach my first initial point where I clicked, as I hover over it, what happens is my cursor adds that little circle and it's saying you're about to close the shape. Perfect. I close it, and now it's a perfectly closed shape. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to show you one more thing here. And this is important too. Some of you by default will have your smart guides on. And let me tell you what smart guides. Smart guides are fantastic and they're really great to use. However, you might find smart guides can get it also in your way. Well, what are smart guides? I'm going to go to view and I'm going to go to Smart Guides, which is Command U. Now, Command U will toggle the Smart Guides on and off. So right now they're off. Usually by default they're on. I must have been working on something and I shut it off. That's not a big deal. I'm going to turn them back on. I'm just going to click on it. And if I go back, I'll see, yes, there's a little check mark there. That means they're on. So this might have already been happening for you, and that's not a big deal. I'm going to click on this again, and what happens is, okay, all of a sudden, I come here, and my cursor is showing me this pink line, it's showing me intersect, it's showing me centers, anchor, it's showing me all this different stuff. This is Smart Guides, and what Smart Guides do, they help you align points and lines and paths to other elements that you might have, that you might want to align to. So Smart Guides are actually great. So let me do the same thing using Smart Guides. So what it does, it helps me to snap. It helps me to snap and align. It's kind of snapping and helping me align myself really, really well to the next point and the next line and so on and so on. So it's a very useful tool. However, there might be moments where you want to snap somewhere specifically. You want to click somewhere specifically, but the Smart Guides are forcing you to go somewhere else. So very simply Command U and you can shut them off. And they're not there. I can go anywhere I want without that little pink line showing up. Or Command U again, I toggle it back on and it's showing me the diameter, it's showing me a bunch of different things here, not a problem. And like I said, they're very useful. I use them majority of the time, but sometimes I do have to shut them off. I'm going to keep them on for now. Maybe they'll help me out, but if I ever have to shut them off, I know what to do. Command U, or just go to View, Smart Guides, and you can shut them off. All right, so we're done with that. We made our path. That's great. Closed path. Let's talk about some closed paths. Now we just made that one with our closed path before with the star. Let's do it again. I'm just going to click, hold down Shift, click, hold down Shift, click, hold down Shift, and continue. And as I hover to there, I see I'm about to close the path with that little circle on my cursor now. There we go. Done. Closed path. Beautiful. Well, let's continue on, but this time I'm not going to do it again. I'm just going to use my duplicate method now I know how to do. I'm going to hold down Option. I'm going to hover over the path. Let me do that one more time. There we go. Hold on Option, and I'm going to click and drag, and I see my cursor is duplicated. I'm going to not only hold on Option to duplicate it, I'm going to hold down Shift to keep it at a 0-degree angle so it's perfectly aligned here. Great. There I go. All right, let's quickly once again talk about fill and stroke. So as of right now, I'm just going to move this back a little bit. So right now, this path that I made only has a black stroke. If I want to add a fill, I can click on my fill. Now I know it's active, so I could add a color, and maybe I go to my color picker here, or I can go to my swatches and look at all those default swatches that Illustrator has given me. That's great. So let's just pick one here. Doesn't really matter. Look. Now my fill has been changed to this magenta, or I could add a different color, whatever color you want. Another way to add color, of course, is to go to the color panel, and you can just go to the drop down and click on, RGB or CMYK, depending what color mode you're working in. I'll go to CMYK, I'm used to that. A little bit different color spectrum, but generally pretty nice. I could pick whatever color I want once again. Well, let's change the stroke. Well, how do I change the stroke? Well, very simple. I'll click on the stroke. Now I see that it's active because it's in front of the fill, and let's change the color of the stroke. Now it's tough to see right now because there's an outline on it, but there is a color to the stroke, which is this happens to be this kind of magenta looking color here too. Okay, so, and once again, just to show you one more time, I am going to bring my stroke back to black, but my fill, another way to add a color, just double click on any of these. I'll click on the fill, and it's going to give me the color picker. It's going to be using HSB, so hue, saturation, and brightness. So obviously up top here, I can see that my saturation is at its most and my brightness is at its most, and I can just kind of play around with then all of a sudden I could bring my brightness down. It's still saturated, so this is my full saturation over on this side. This is my brightness, okay, up here. Sorry, my brightness is up here, and obviously it's less bright down here. And my hue and my hue is right here. These are all the different hues that I have, all the different colors, if you will, and you can play around with those. But just a way to show you that this is the general color picker we see in InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator. And that's kind of it. So if I like that color for some reason, I'll say, yeah, great, and I'll go from there. But really for now, just a quick way to show you how to play with color in here. But I'm also going to show you now this other important way. So I am going to bring the fill back to white just for now, and I'm going to make the stroke active and kind of just play around from here. So I do have a fill, I have a stroke, but look at these, selects the entire object. So what really is the difference between the black arrow and the white arrow, the selection tool and the direct select tool? Well, it's very simple. The black tool, the black select arrow, just allows me to select the entire shape or path and move it around and do whatever I want with it. I can transform it. Well, how do I do to transform it? I can select a side, and I can squeeze it, which I don't really like to do. I'd rather scale it proportionally, so I can grab a corner and I hold down Shift to scale it proportionally. If I don't want to scale it proportionally, just don't hold down Shift, and you can kind of, once again, do whatever you want. But holding down Shift lets you scale proportionally, which we usually like to do. I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller, and remember, we're in Illustrator, so these are vector graphics, meaning you can scale it up as big as you want or as small as you want. The quality will remain the same because it's not made of pixels. It's not dependent on resolution, which is great. Now, that's what the black arrow tool does. I'll show you a few more things here. If I hover over the corner, what happens is my cursor turns into this rotate, and I can rotate the tool. Once again, if I hold down Shift, I can rotate it at different angles or very specific angles. If I don't hold down Shift, I can rotate it at any angle I want, just to show you that. Now, there is a transform panel here as well. Once again, if you're not too sure, window and transform. Down here, you could open that up, and you can change up the X and Y position. You could change up the width and height specifically. You could change up its rotation, and you could even change up the shear if you need to change that up. Once again, we're not really looking to do that, so I'm just going to kind of go back. Command Z is just undo, which is the same up here, edit and undo, move, or just Command Z. But you could also redo if you want to do that, but I rarely use that keyboard shortcut. Well, I'm actually going to use it right now, Command Shift Z, there we go. So that's what the black arrow tool does. So what does the direct select or the white arrow tool do? Well, it allows you to individually choose points on the path and play with them. So where the black arrow, if I just selected this with this point, that's all I really could do is transform the whole thing. But with the white arrow, I could actually select a point. Let me drag this off a little bit here. I can actually select a point that I made, an anchor point, and move it individually. So now I can move it here, I can move it here, I could delete it, I could kind of do whatever I want with it. And that goes for any point at all. I could select multiple points. If I hold down one and hold down Shift, I could select another, and I could move those and all together. And only this one stays static. Okay, that's great. So the white arrow tool allows me to individually change up the path and individually select individual points on the path. That's it, which is great. All right, so I'm just going to bring that over here. We talked about fill and stroke, and we talked about that. So let me do that one more time. And like I said over here, I'm going to just duplicate that, hold down Option, hold down Shift, and I've duplicated it. And once again, that's what the move tool does. I'm just going to select down here. I could hold down Shift and it make sure it only stays in one area there. I'm going to bring it up here. That's where I wanted it. Great. That's it. Very simple. Well, not only will it allow me, it doesn't matter which one. I am going to bring this one over. Hold on Option, hold down Shift. There we go. Duplicate it. Well, not only can I move an individual, I'm going to get rid of the fill. Can I move an individual point? Obviously, I can move a line. Oh, I got rid of that. Let's do that. Figure that back to black. There we go. And 0.25. It keeps changing on me. I can select a point and move that line. Or if I select the line itself, it's like I am selecting these points because I can move the line as well. So if I just select this line that goes from here to here, I can move just that line. That's great. So I don't have to select just the points. If I want to move just this line, I can just click on the line and only the line will move. So it automatically almost like selects these points for me. So that's just another option. You hold Shift to deselect one or more anchor points. Once again, I mentioned that. I could hold down Shift and I could hold down another and another. Or you say, you know what, I just don't want that one selected. That's okay. Hold down Shift and click again and it will deselect it. So holding down Shift, I could select or deselect and it'll let me move things around there any way I want. Okay. There we go. So I could select points or I could select individual lines. Great. Now here's a couple extra tools that we're going to use. This last one here in our subset is the anchor point tool. So once again, I'm just going to select I'll do this manually. There I go. Great. no fill, that's good. So there's this convert points to curves. So these are called corners. These perfect little sharp corners are called corners, corner points. What I can do with this tool, I'm going to have it selected. With this tool, the anchor point tool, what it does, it converts this point. It either converts a point to a curve or it converts a curve to a corner. So let's click on it. I'm just going to click. Well, nothing happened. Okay. I'm going to click, and this time I'm going to click and drag. Oh, let's see what's happening here. Now I'm adding curves to my path. Well, what's happening here? Well, when I add a curve or make a curve, I'm adding something called control arms. These are two control arms. There's one on the right, one on the left. I can move it here, I can move it here, and you can see what the red line is doing. It's showing me what that potential new path is going to look like. And that's great. And once again, keep in mind that these two control arms are connected. If I move one up, the other one goes down. If I move one this way, the other one goes up. They are connected. If I move it in, it comes in too. If I move it out wide, the other one goes wide too. So they are connected together. Keep that in mind. So I'm just going to move that one there. Great. And I'm just going to click and drag this one here, but I'm going to go this way this time, just to show you this is what happens if you go this way. I'll let go. Or I can click and drag and go this way, and that's what happens. Doesn't really matter. And once I have it, I can move it around. I can click and drag these ones out too and create new curves. Not a problem. Well, what if I have this curve and I want to make it a corner point? Well, if this is already curved, not a problem. Let me click and it converts it back to a corner point. That's it. It gets rid of the curve for me. So if I have a curve, I can click and drag. I made the curve. If I click on it again, it goes back to a corner point. Very, very simple. So let me do that one more time. Click and drag. I let go of the mouse. I click and drag. I let go of the mouse. And there I go. And once again, if I hold down Shift, it keeps it at a very specific angle. 0 degree, 45 degree, and 90 degree. All right. Great. And we'll move on here. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to make my square again. It's closed. This time I have these extra little tools here. They look very similar, obviously, to our anchor point tool, and they do work the same way. But with my control panel open, once again, I have some options here. I have this convert to corner or convert and make it a curved or smooth path. All right, let's try it out. So I'm just going to, with my white arrow tool, I'm going to select one anchor point, and I'm just going to, because right now I already know it's a corner point, I'm going to make it a curved point. Oh, cool. I click on another and I can make it a curved point, and I click on another and make it a curved point, make it another. So instead of clicking on the anchor tool and clicking and dragging it out, I could automatically click on this tool and it automatically turns it into a curved point, and I can grab the control arm and I can kind of do whatever I want to do there if I want to. Well, alternatively, the opposite. So I can click on this. It was a curve. I want to turn it back to a corner. Turn it back to a corner. Click on here, turn it back to a corner, and so on and so on. Very, very simple. Great. Done. Easy. That's all we really wanted to do there. The next part here. All right. So this is curved lines. So we kind of made our curve there before. I'm leading into it. So here I go. How do I make an actual curved line? Well, this can be tricky because we're so used to just click and move and click and move and click and move. This is just very simple. We just now click and drag, meaning you hold on to the click before you let go, and then now you make a curved line. So normally I click, and that's fine. That's all I need to do. But what if I click, and now I click and drag? If I click and drag, I automatically create control arms, and I can move them around and play around. So let's follow this one here. So I'm going to click. I'm not going to let go of the click yet. I'm going to drag. And I can see I'm kind of lining them up there with my template underneath. And I'm holding down Shift. Once again, I can hold down Shift, and it keeps it at a 90 or 45 or 0 degrees. So I'm going to hold down Shift. I dragged it down. It doesn't matter which way you go, especially on this one. It doesn't, like I'm doing it the opposite. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to do it the other way after. I go to my next anchor point. I click and drag. That's it. Click and drag. Now I just press escape. Okay, so let me do it the other way. So instead, I clicked and dragged down. I'm going to click and drag up, hold down Shift. Great, I'm going to bring it over here. Notice my red line, where it's going. It's showing me where my next line is. So if I just clicked there and left it, that would be my line. That's fine. It's not what I want, but I'm just going to click, and I'm going to drag up, hold down Shift to keep it at a 0 degree or 90 degree angle, and there I go. I press escape, and there's my line. All right. And once again, some of you might realize, oh, my control arms are gone. It's like, no, they're not. You just got to click on it again. Click on the white arrow tool. Click on your anchor point, and then they show up again. All right, they're always there, and you could kind of always go back to them. Now, the one tool I haven't really gotten to yet, but I'll quickly show you, is the continue from point. It's the last kind of tool of the pen tool that we haven't really seen. And mainly what that means is that even though my path is not complete, it's an incomplete path, and I'm not on it anymore, it's not active, I could actually just hover over an existing point, and notice my cursor turns into that little slash, meaning I can continue a path, even though the path isn't complete. That's the most important part. An incomplete path, like meaning it's not a completed shape, I haven't closed it yet, I can actually continue on a path that is not active for a while. So I click off of it, not a problem. Let me click on it again. I'll go to my pen tool and I hover over a point and it shows me the slash, meaning now I'm going to work on this path again. I've reconnected the path again. That's great. I can do whatever I want, move around, have some fun. And once I reconnect to the original point, my little circle shows up, meaning I'm about to make a closed path. Great, done, awesome. Now, can I hover over a point and connect it again and start over again? No, it's a completed path. I could delete a point and all that, but it's a completed path, so therefore I can't continue the path. That's all, just to show you that. So just because you finished a path, as long as it's incomplete, you can pick it back up and continue the path at another time. So I can start from here, I can start from here, doesn't really matter. Once again, if I go here and maybe I want to complete it straight, well, there's my completed path, and I'm fine with that, but don't really need to do that. Well, let's continue on and click and drag. So let's do it this way. I'm going to click and drag up, hold down shift to keep it at a 90-degree angle. I'm going to click and drag down this time. And I'm just going to click and drag up this time. That's all. I can keep going if I want. Click and drag up. And click and drag down. Doesn't matter. I'm just showing you can continue that along as much as you want. I press escape and I'm happy with that. Great. Next one. Let's complete it. So I'm going to click and drag up, hold down shift. Doesn't have to be perfect. Click and drag down. Great. And I'm going to come back here and I'm going to complete the path, but I'm not just going to click to complete it. If I do it, I'm just going to get that. Instead, I'm going to click and drag up, hold down shift to keep it at 90 degrees, and there I go. Very nice. So one way to play around with that. Well, this one's a little bit different. This one is what we call breaking the arm. We're going to break the arm on this path. Well, what does that mean? Well, let's look at it. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to click, but I'm going to click and drag, hold down shift to keep it at 90 degrees. Then I'm going to come here. I'm going to do the same thing, click and drag. But before I let go of my click, and remember, those control arms are always working together. I go right, that one goes left. I come closer, this one comes closer. I go further apart, that other control arm goes further apart. Well, this time what I want to do is I want to break that. I'm not going to let that happen anymore. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to hold down Option. If I hold down Option, watch what happens. I hold down Option. Look at that, it's moving independently. One control arm is moving independently of itself. It's not connected to this anymore. Now, if I let go of Option, it's connected again. Everything works the same, but if I let go or click on Option, I can move it anywhere I want. And watch what happens. I'm going to put it out here for some reason. Okay, I let go, and now look at my red line, what it's about to create. It's creating something very weird because this angle is really far out there. That's okay. Let's pretend I'm going to move around and play around. I'm turning into a flying saucer, whatever the case is. So let me do that one more time. I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to hold down Option and break the control arm. But what I want to do, I'm going to bring it back to its original point, back to its original anchor here, and I'm just going to release it. It's like the control arm is back, or kind of disappeared. It's back here at its original anchor point. And I'm just going to bring it across, hold down shift, done. I've closed the path, I broke the control arm, perfect. Let me do that one more time. All right, so I just selected all that with my marquee, the select tool, and just press delete on my keyboard. All right, so let's do that again. Click and drag, oh, wrong way. Click and drag up, hold down shift, click and drag down, but this time I'm going to hold down Option and I'm going to bring the control arm back to its original point right there. Okay, now it's like that control arm doesn't exist, and my next line can be wherever I want it to go, but here I'm going to hold down shift and reconnect it and close the path, and that's what I want. But there is another situation that happens. I'm going to click and drag, but I'm also just going to let go. Okay, that's kind of weird because that's not what I wanted. I let go of the click accidentally, and that's okay because if clicked off, but I still want to complete it this way, not a problem. Hold down Option again. That's it. Hold down Option, go back to your control arm, the one you want to move, and just bring it back. So even if you let go of the click, you could still hold on Option, go to your control arm, and break it and mess around with it some more. All right, very simple. Let's do it some more. So we're going to break the path or break the control arm. Okay, let's do it again. So I'm going to click and drag up, hold down Shift, click and drag. Oh, I'm going to click and drag down this time. But once again, I'm not going to let go of my click just yet. I'm going to hold down Option. As I hold down Option, what happens? It breaks the arm. Great. I'm going to bring it back. Actually, up top here. I'm not going to bring it back to its original point. I'm going to bring it up to its other control arm. And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to click and drag down. I'm not going to let go of the click. I hold down Option, and instead of bringing it back to its anchor point, its origin, I'm going to bring it up to its other control arm and just create another path. And there's so much of this we can do. And continue on. Maybe I want to bring the anchor point up here, or sorry, the control arm back up there. That's fine. It's just going to give me a different curve. Not a problem. Maybe I want to bring my control arm here. That's fine. It'll give me something else. Maybe I want to bring my control arm here. That's fine. I'm going to hold down Option, break it again, and bring it down here. And there's so many things I could do with that, but breaking the arm will help you play around with different, obviously, ways to move the path around and to move that curve and to play around with the curve. That's an important one. All right. So that's how we do that. Well, now we're actually onto a symbol that we're familiar with. And let's do that. So this heart is actually, there's so many ways to make a heart. This is just one way, which you may or may not prefer to do. It's entirely up to you. So what I'm going to do is there's going to be two clicks, one here and one here, but it's how I control my control arms, or how I move my control arms, and using Option to break the control arm, which is going to help. So I'm just going to click, and I'm not just going to let the click leave it alone. My very first click is going to be a click and drag. So I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to hold, no, I'm not going to hold down Shift because it's going to be a 45-degree angle. I don't want that. I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to line up that control arm with the top one here, right there. So I'm going to drag it down there. I'm going to hold down Option, and I'm going to break it. I'm going to bring it up here. Great. Done. Then I'm going to click and drag. All right. And I'm going to line up that anchor point at the top right there. Okay. I'm going to hold down Option. I'm lining, see how that red line, I'm lining it up with that top curve, that top hump. Line it up there. I'm going to hold down Option to break the arm. I'm going to line it up with this one. And I'm going to let go. And I'm just going to close the path. Sorry, it's actually 3 clicks because I am closing the path. And I'm going to just align that curve to the top, or sorry, that control arm to the top control arm. And there's my heart. Now, it's not a perfect heart because I did play around with it. What I could do is actually make one half, duplicate it, flip it, and then reconnect it. But that's a more little advanced feature. But either way, there's a way to play with that. Here's another little quick tip that you might want to use if you're playing around, you kind of made a mistake. So what you could do, you could hold the space bar to move the control arm when you're dragging. So if I click and I click, but I was like, actually that's not where I wanted to put my anchor point. You could actually press the space bar. I'm holding the space bar right now, and I can actually move that anchor point anywhere I want. Even if I accidentally say, oh, you know what, even I'm holding, I don't want the anchor point there, I want it somewhere else, not a problem. I could hold down spacebar and it moves the anchor point. That's not a problem. I can move it here, move it wherever I want. Oh, I moved it there. Great. Oh, you know what? I don't want it there. I want this. I want that anchor point, but I'm gonna have the control arm moved. I want to move it somewhere else. Not a problem. Move it down here. I'm holding down the space bar, and it allows me to move the anchor point, even though I'm dragging the control arms out. It'll still allow me to move the anchor point using the space bar. So that same idea there. So let me escape. So here, I'm going here. Oh, I made a mistake. Not a problem. Hold down spacebar and I'll just move it up there. Very simple, very quick little tip there you might want to use. Okay, great. Well, we're coming near the end here. Here's a couple more features that I like. I'm going to get into the Curvature Tool, but this one has been a newer one for me that I like to use. And it's this new feature, I'll say newer feature, but manipulate curve. And this allows me to play around a different way when making curves, because sometimes curves are the trickiest ones. Curves, if you have too many points to make a curve, if I were to make this heart, And let me show you what I mean. If I were to make this heart kind of like this, and I'm trying to control it, and I'm not doing a great job, and when our first time users, this is usually what happens. You try to make something like this, and you're like, I'm kind of doing a decent job, and it turns out not great. It's a little too, exactly, not curved, not smooth. And smooth lines are one of the toughest things to do in Illustrator, to make them really look smooth and really look crisp and clean. And that's kind of the mark of a good designer that can kind of make anything look smooth, which is really, really good. Now, one way to do that is actually to make it very geometric and very simple. But the one way to play around with, especially with this art, is to actually find points at the outermost part of the shape. Now, this one happens to be the heart. So instead of putting an anchor here, I'm actually putting an anchor at the outermost top of this shape. I'm also going to put an anchor at the outermost side of the shape. Outermost bottom, outermost side, outermost top, and obviously, of course, one in the middle here. So let's play around with that. I'm going to click in the middle. I'm going to click at the outermost point at the top, and the outermost point on the right, the outermost point at the bottom, left, and top, and back here again. Great. Now, obviously, that does not look great. However, watch what happens when I click on my path, click on my pen tool, and I press Option. If I hold down Option, what it allows me to do is now I can actually see if I hover over that line, this new tool shows up. It's a Manipulate Curve tool. What I can do is I can just click and drag, and all of a sudden, automatically, 2 control arms come up from 2 separate anchor points to help me create that curve. Once again, hold on Option over this, and I bring it down, and what it's going to help me do is create smooth lines. And I could bring it down here a little bit, or I can bring it up here, but it lets me control 2 control arms from 2 separate anchor points, which allows me to create a little bit more fluid, flow-like, smoother line, which is a really great way. I've started using this a lot more, and I find it really helps with to smooth out the line. Now, can it be smoother? Of course. I'd have to fine tune it, zoom in a little closer, and get that if I wanted to get really close. Command plus, and I can go back. Now, here's a great thing about all these shapes we just made. You can go back any time to any path, be it seconds later, 2 years later, 20 years later, it doesn't matter. You could always go back to a path anytime and re-manipulate it. It's like, you know what, that didn't look too great there, not a problem. Let me move this line. I'm going to bring this path down here. Great. Oh, you know what? I want to add another anchor point here for some weird reason. Not a problem. Go ahead, add an anchor point there. You know what? I wasn't happy with it. I want to delete it. Not a problem. Delete that anchor point. So there's so many things you could do even after the fact that you already worked on this. You can go back to any path anytime and re-manipulate it a million different ways. So don't ever think just because it's closed you can't go back. No, you can go back to any point at any time and play around with it. Okay, so just to give you that heads up. So more or less what I did here is exactly what would happen here. The heart, I would just kind of manipulate the curve out, and it works great. It really is a fun way to play around with it. All right, so the curvature tool. So this is a different tool than the pen tool. It's very similar, but what it allows for really, really nice curves. So we are going to play around with this duck here, but the idea is that not only is it a very curvy tool, but it allows you to make corner edges as well, corner points as well. But let me first start off by making this circle. Well, how do I make a circle? I know how to make a circle. First things first, let me just show you what the curvature tool does. So if I click here, okay, and I'm going to make another click. Sure. All right, so already the click is not a straight click, so this is just a line, but it's actually this red line that I'm kind of creating. And what I could do, I could click again, and notice what's happening is that the line is not actually finished here. It keeps moving, creating a nice curve whatever I do, and see what happens as soon as I connect. It doesn't want me to have a corner point. It actually wants me to create more curve, and it allows me to do that. Now, can I manipulate these? And anytime I manipulate these, the other line starts to move too, to make sure it's always a kind of like that perfect curve to keep it flowing the right way, no matter what. Can I add more lines? Of course. More curves? For sure. So there's no hard points here, there's no hard corners, and it's always almost like perfectly curved, so there's no kind of break anywhere. It's just lovely, quite frankly. That's why the curvature tool exists. So let's play around with it a little bit more. I'm just going to click here, and look what's happening. I click here, and there, and it makes a perfect circle using these 4 anchor points to make that circle. Well, that's great for these kind of abstract and interesting random shapes I can make. Well, what about an actual silhouette here of this duck? Let's see what we can do with this. Well, let's play around. Well, in order to make a corner point, I have to double click. So if I click and move there, and if I double click somewhere, it's going to automatically make that a corner point. See what happened there? It's no longer curvy. I can make another corner point, and then I can curve and curve and curve. But as I did that, this will never change. These ones don't change, but all the other lines can kind of move with the curve. So let's play around with that with this silhouette here. So back to the pen tool. So I'm going to double click right away because this is going to be a point. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong tool. Curvature. I double click, and I'm going to click here, the outermost point. And what I need to do is, the way it's going to work with this is I'm not going to move forward. I'm actually going to click back and move it. Let me do that one more time just to show you. I'll start over. I'm going to double click because that's going to be my corner point. I'm going to click on this outermost point here once, and I'm going to bring my curvature tool back on the line that already exists. I'm going to click again. Sorry, I'm going to click and drag, and now I've made that curve. Great, let me do that again. I'm going to click on my outermost point here. I'm going to click, and I'm going to click back, and I'm going to click and drag here. Now you're looking at this, you're like, that doesn't really look great. Not a problem, because what I can do, click and drag, and add another point. Perfect. Let's go to the outermost point here. I'm going to click, and I'm going to click and drag here, and let's try to create that curve. I'm missing that. Well, that's okay. Let's click and drag and make another point. And we can continue along and try to find that. But the greatest thing about this is maybe, potentially, this is actually making better curves for me. I'm going to bring this back here. Maybe I'll bring this one here. And see how it fixes it no matter what, trying to find it for me. And I can obviously fine tune this any way I want. I can go back, get rid of some of these curves. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to continue on. And it will help me continue on. Even though I've made these other points here, it will still continue on from here. So I'm going to make another point here. Just one click, then I'm going to click and drag here and form that bill right about there. Great. I'm going to continue on, and then once again, I'm just playing around for now. I can always go back and fine tune. I'm going to click once, I'm going to come back to that line, click and drag, bring it up. Kind of, once again, my smart guides have been on the whole time, and they've been actually very helpful, so I'm going to keep them on. I like what they're doing. I'll zoom out a little bit. Click and drag, click, then I click and drag to find this curve. So you see now, as those curves are being made, it's actually adjusting the other curve to really help me find it. But I made a mistake there, didn't I? I should have double clicked here to make, because that's going to pivot. It's going to be a hard corner there. So I'm going to double click, and I can go here. So it's good to know ahead of time kind of what you're making there. That works. So now that I'm here, I'm going to find this. I click once, click and drag, click once, come back, click and drag. Now, can I fix that later? Of course, not a problem. I'm going to double click here because this is going to be a corner point where it's going to come back. Double click. Yeah. I'm going to double click here as well, but I'm going to come back here and click and drag. Try to find that. Good. I'm going to double click here. I'm going to come back to the line and click and drag. And to finish it off, I'm just going to click. There we go. So now, could I go back and fix this? Sure. What I probably would need to do is shut off my smart guides so I can kind of move it any way I want. I think that was kind of the problem a little bit. My smart guides are a little kind of forcing me to go to a certain spot, and that's not a problem. But can I always go back and kind of fix up the curve? And was my original drawing or sketch underneath, the perfect way it could be? Well, the curvature tool always makes sure your curves are really, really well done, so you don't have to worry too much about that. All right. So that's how the curvature tool works. Great. Great. And just to show you, just to give you a heads up here as well, that there is something called the smooth tool, and the smooth tool can be found here. And what you can do with the smooth tool, this is a great little advanced feature, but it's nice, is you could actually click and drag along a path to make it even smoother, and it kind of refine things. It gets rid of anchor points, or add some anchor points to help you smooth something out. So it might be something you want to try as well. But the curvature tool is super great, creating those nice curved lines that sometimes are hard to get, and it does a really great job of it. And obviously the smooth tool, which is located underneath the shaper tool, a little helper that can help you do that as well. So just a little advanced tip there. And one of the last ones I'm going to do here now is the rounded corners. So it's just a very simple trick here with Illustrator, a little advanced feature, but it's there and you might as well learn about it, which is great. So I'm just going to make this square. I'm just going to click, hold down shift and click, hold down shift. And I am going to turn my anchor point, or sorry, my smart guides on, because I want to line up with this one very well. And it seems that it's going to get me there. Great, cool. And now what happens when I click on this, I don't see them yet, but when I hold down Command, these little circles show up. So on my black arrow tool selected, if I hold down Command, these little circles show up in the corners. Usually this also works when I click on my white arrow tool and I select all the points. These little circles show up again. Awesome. Well, what are these little circles? What do they do, these double circles? Well, they allow me to round the corners if I want to round the corners. So let's try that. I'm going to use my black arrow tool, select it, hold down Command. I'm going to click on one, and I'm just going to start clicking and dragging. And what you'll notice is a little tooltip shows up next to my cursor as I start to drag, and that's the radius of the corner. So let's pretend I want, really sharp. I'm going to make a perfect circle. But if I want it out and I want a 0.05 inch corner radius, done. Awesome. Well, the other thing I can do as well is, what if I just want to select one? I can select one and just move one, and I can make an interesting shape there too. Okay, and I'm going to undo that. What I could also do is select multiple, but let me do that with the white arrow tool. With the white arrow tool, I'm going to select multiple points. You have to select the points, and I can select, hold down shift, and I can actually select a couple points. Maybe I'll do it for here too. I'm going to hold on shift, click on that one, shift click, and shift click. And now what I can do, I'm only manipulating 3 of them and leaving one on its own. So there's a great way to play with the rounded corners. And maybe I don't want to go that far, and I just want to play with these two, say. Well, I can do that too, or maybe just a little bit. And once again, we could play around with shapes quite a bit there, just by clicking on these little circles that show up and clicking and dragging and playing around. I hope this helps you understand the pen tool, a little bit of fill and stroke, the curvature tool, and different ways to play around with Illustrator, and the basics of the pen tool, which are super useful, not only in this program either, but in many programs. This exists in Photoshop, in InDesign, it exists in After Effects. It's many programs that have the pen tool and how it works. So I hope this helped.